So many smiling faces.
Hi, Harold. I thought I left.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you all.
Hey, Stan.
Hi, Stan.
Jerry.
Hi, Stan.
Oh, we can be unmuted. My God, what freedom.
Oh,
Don't abuse it.
Second time today.
Hi.
Hi, Bill.
Or text.
Hello. So I can mute now.
I don't even know all these people.
It's a big.
Who are you? Yeah, who are you?
Ming's on now.
Hello,
So
everybody.
long since I've seen you.
Hi.
It is 7 o'clock, so I'd like to welcome you to BCCO's rehearsal. And well, rehearsal, it's more like a session. It's more like a gathering on Zoom. And it's so wonderful to see everybody's faces. And still not, I'm still not one to really know how to use the fancy backgrounds, but I like to see those that are, you know, in idyllic vacations on the lake or under sunsets or whatnot. As always, we are waiting until a few minutes later, especially because Zoom. This is a different format that we've been using for this session to see everybody's faces. But since people might take a little longer to get online, I thought I'd play a piece. I thought I'd play a piece by Robert Schumann, and we've talked about Schumann a bit. Robert Schumann, as you know, was married to Clara Wieck, who was the daughter of his piano teacher. And Clara Wieck was this phenomenal talent. And even after Robert had passed away in the asylum and was almost together with Brahms, she used to concertize as one of the great pianists in Europe. But when Robert met her, I think Robert was maybe 22 and she was 13. And they were playing at a recital together. And Clara's mother nudged Clara and said, "You must marry this Robert one day." And the as the story goes, those were words she probably didn't want to say, because it turns out that Robert and Clara actually fell madly in love with each other when Robert was 24 and Clara was 15. And so that was frowned upon, especially by Clara's father. And he forbid the marriage, especially because Robert actually injured himself as a pianist and couldn't support himself anymore, and was actually potentially suffering from syphilis, and complications of syphilis, and so he wasn't very stable. But before they got married, the year before they got married, first of all, they got married when Claire was 21, and she didn't need the permission of her father anymore. And in the year before Claire and Robert got married, Robert wrote to Claire and said, they were engaged at this point, and said, you know, you often say that you think of me like a child, and it just made me think of composing these little works for, you know, like they call it Kindersehen, these little works for children. And this is a form that really didn't exist too much beforehand, really short works. And the piece that I'm going to play is called Dreaming, Traumachai. And it's very, very famous. You'll probably recognize it if you don't recognize the name. But it's one of the most beloved pieces of this set. But it was written to basically woo Clara. And as we've talked about, he actually sending little works to Claire throughout, just like Brahms did later on. So while we wait for people, I'll just play Traumerei, which is pretty short, and then we'll continue about this new session and how BCCO might look like in the future. So this is Schumann's Traumerei.
Kevin, good. We're encouraging you to join Zoom.
It's a beautiful, beautiful piece. And as I said, it's probably the most famous of his works. And so that takes us, I think, to this session today with BCCO. I also wanted to start off with a piece that's very peaceful itself, because I think especially with the protests, which are very energetic and simultaneous stress of the world feeling like it's all in turmoil, and ourselves feeling like maybe our inner selves are also in turmoil. I think we oftentimes need to have the moment to actually quiet down our inner beings and to be connected to the world around us and not to our anxieties that might surround us. So for me, I find music very centering. And in fact, like I've mentioned before, it is probably one of the primary functions, evolutionary functions.
They have 100 people and I can't get on now.
And so it's one of these things where I think that if we take the time, as always, to always check in with ourselves to make sure that we're present, especially as everything else around us seems to go haywire, I think that's very helpful. So we've had very much an experiment of what BCCO is over the last few weeks while we've dealt with shelter in place and the continual idea of the continual question of what or when things are going to return back to normal, if they do. And today, even the New York Times polled 511 epidemiologists, and they said, for the following activities, do you expect to do them now, or are you comfortable doing them maybe in 1 to 3 months, or 6 months, or a year plus? And it's really quite difficult because a lot of the information that they said, the quotes and whatnot, had a lot of differing information, but the general idea was, especially for concerts and for large group gatherings, that it might be something that is pushed further back than we'd like. And so the question to the board and myself, of course, and artistic staff is that how do we maintain this idea of community when we don't have the ability to congregate as a community, where we don't have the ability to meet together as people and to hear each other, face to face, side by side. And so part of our discussion today is actually to try to talk through what things might look like. And with the idea that maybe the fall semester is done virtually and maybe we can come back in spring to rehearse repertoire together, or maybe the entire year might be done virtually. And obviously, as many of you, as I know, have been involved in Zoom conferences and virtual meetings of various sorts. And the big thing that comes out over and over again is that it's almost impossible to have some sort of feedback loop that we build off of and we have music together. We can have me talking to people, we can have me playing towards people and you singing in your various areas. But as soon as we try to have you sing along with somebody else and both of them heard at the same time, the technology is not fast enough, instantaneous enough for us to be able to do that. And so we have to think creatively about how we go about what next season might be. So the thing is that we're experimenting this summer. We're going to be having summer sessions. We're going to be having 2 summer sessions, going to be diving into some of our favorite repertoire, one piece that we know very much and love very much, and I know obviously has great significance to BCCO as Arlene Sagan's last piece that she conducted, and that's of course the Brahms Requiem that we're going to do virtually, and to be able to rehearse as well as sing, as well as to have guests to come with us, and potentially even create one of these stitched together little videos that we can have as a memento for all time, for this very special time. And then the other work, of course, is Tippett's Child of Our Time, which is set up like the Bach Passions. And if you sang the St. John Passion with BCCO, or if you know the Bach Passions, basically it's a story that's punctuated with chorales. And so in function, which is not how it's actually done nowadays, but in function, what it would be like if you were in a mass, that you would have soloists and a professional chorus, a hired chorus, singing together many choruses and solos, but then the congregation would actually be invited to participate and sing along these very familiar chorales that happen and have some sort of moral storytelling aspect along the way in these passions. And so what Tippett did to make it more even more meaningful towards today's audiences is that instead of having chorales like you would hear at church, he had 5 spirituals that you all know. like Deep River or By and By, and just these are gorgeous, gorgeous chorales. And what we are going to do is in this summer session, which are three rehearsals long each. So 3 rehearsals on the Brahms Requiem and putting together 2 movements of the Brahms Requiem for recording that we all rehearse together. And then, of course, for the Tippett, Child of Our Time, we're going to be learning a couple of these spirituals. And these aren't just traditionally, I mean, like he did compose and arrange the spirituals, so they are pretty much involved, but they're really gorgeous works and very meaningful works when we eventually will actually be performing the Tippett in whole as a whole piece later on. I think not the next season we can perform, the season after that, because I believe our thoughts might be to try to continue with the Te Deums. But obviously everything is still day to day, week to week, month to month. And I can't believe how long it's been in quarantine, but we'll see how things shake out as we go along with this. So the first one, like I said, actually starts in a couple weeks, the Brahms Requiem. We're going to be singing along together parts of it. We're going to be talking about it, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more in depth. We're going to be having clinicians come on and do vocalizing, just like Jennifer Paulino did and Deb Galata did, that go a little bit more specific into technical aspects of the voice. We're going to be having breakout sections where we can actually talk and have little social discussions about the meaning of Brahms in your life, or maybe some stories about when you got involved with Brahms. And the one that I always talk about is my father and I. My father, grew up on Bach, and so the only thing I heard every single week, every single day was Bach. And there's this album in the 70s called Switched on Bach, which was Bach played on synthesizer. And I thought it was the best thing in the world. And he and I used to laugh so much because of the sounds and, of course, the brilliance of Bach. But, Bach is, 100 years away from Brahms. And there's a lot of progression in the harmonies and the orchestration. And so the first time I listened to Brahms, it was basically like I was a classical era composer, like I was a Baroque era composer. And Brahms made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. It was too far out there. It was too thick. It was too emotional. It was too chromatic. I didn't understand the harmonies. And so, that was my first experience with Brahms. And I've since come to, obviously, like many of us do, love Brahms beyond belief. And it is, he is one of these amazing composers. And, what I think nowadays is that it's much more apparent how the music of a composer is driven by their inner being. And Brahms' repression, his reticence, his constant need to keep his emotions in check and unknown to the rest of the world, and of course his repressed love of Clara Schumann, I think really shows in his music a lot. And, when we talk about various repertoire, like Brahms's Requiem, which was, as you know, written after Robert Schumann passed away, he started writing parts of the Requiem. But then when his mother passed away, it was this, he wrote with this frenzied activity for the rest of the Requiem. And, all the various aspects you know and love, but we'll be exploring in different ways that you might not know, and some more technical ways, because I think that there's so much craft to this work. And as you know, he spent a long time trying to perfect his orchestral writing so he could write his first symphony at age 40. But the Requiem was, in advance of all that, and became exploration, fullest expression of orchestral writing. And so the way he utilizes the instruments is so brilliant and very heartfelt. And so, in speaking and exploring the work in different lenses than we might do in rehearsal or whatnot, I think is going to be a very interesting idea. And then, of course, the Tippett, which many of you might not know of. It was new to me, except that I knew it from a historical basis and knew some of the spirituals. But as a work itself, its brilliance and, of course, its incredible depth of meaning too, I think is going to be really interesting. So our goal is to really have an experiment on what the fall semester might look like. And we're going to be experimenting with these 2 summer sessions, 3 rehearsal sessions at a time. And so it's enough to really dive in deep, but not long enough to get too mired in it. And then, of course, we'll start with the Brahms and then do the Tippett. But the fall semester might very well look like this. Instead of rehearsing entire works or instead of rehearsing multiple movements at a time, what I'm thinking about doing is actually having a single movement or two being rehearsed at a time. So we get it together, so we rehearse it together, so we record it together, and then we have little snippets along the way, and repertoire that might be easier to break up into chunks. And so we're not quite sure what the repertoire is. It really depends on how these sessions go in the summer. But I think I'm really actually excited. I was talking to a radio station in Hawaii, and they were talking about how this is a time for innovation, because we're driven out of necessity to actually find new ways to communicate with each other, to connect with each other, to make music together, and to have community together. And so I'm really excited to see all your faces, because I think Zoom is wonderful because of that, is that we can actually scroll through and see everybody's faces. But today we're going to be spending time doing breakout sessions where we're actually going to be gathered in smaller bunches to be able to talk to each other, to be able to suggest things to each other. And then we're going to have moderators, I think, that somebody's going to talk about soon, about how the sessions are going to be organized, so that we make sure, as always, that BCCO is a very flat organization. Everybody's importance, everybody's voice is important. Not only, obviously, their vocal and artistic voice, but your minds and your thoughts, because without you, we wouldn't have an organization. And so it's important for us to make sure that we have the thoughts and ideas from everybody, and for what COVID-19 music making and community building might be through music. So that's my little talk. I want to, obviously, because this is the last rehearsal, I want to, before I forget, I want to thank Julia and Paul, especially because, you know, Paul leading our fantastic sing-alongs at the end, Julia doing research versus warm-ups, and our goal, if possible, is to have actually Julia and Julia continue with us in the fall, of course with Paul too, but since she, even as she is going to grad school, might be virtually attending grad school or virtually connecting with us, we've invited her, obviously, to come back, of course, with Paul too. And so I just want to also note that Julia had a note that she is still working on the virtual choir. It's one thing to do a stitching together of like 15 people, but it's another thing to do a stitching together of like 75 people or whatever it was. And so she said she did need a little bit more time. Of course, again, I also want to thank, of course, the entire board, especially Christian Fritza, who organizes all the technology aspects of it, of which I have literally no clue, and he makes this all work amazingly. And of course, all the members of the board, whose main goal really is to represent all of us. And all times, we really try to make sure that the thoughts and ideas from the wider chorus are represented in the board. So I want you to know that. And it's a really fun group. So if you're ever looking for more engagement, BCCO is always looking for more board members. And we always have people cycling through on and off. And it's a really fun time, of course, with a lot of food and drinks and just good company. So that's what I'm going to say. And I'm going to pass it along to maybe Christian, who's going to talk about.
Yeah, I'm going to give an interim update, a little bit unexpected. We have thanks for the comments about my technical knowledge, but we have our first big snafu in that while we paid for access for up to 500 people so we could get the whole chorus on here tonight, Zoom inexplicably overnight dropped that service again for us, and we're back down to 100 limit. And in fact, there are 100 people on right now on our Zoom call, and another 40 or so over on the YouTube side because they can't get in. So we're scrambling a little bit to set that right or figure out what we can do. So patience, everybody, if you don't mind. And we might turn it back to Ming. I think you had a musical selection for us. And
yes, I want to thank you, Christian. I completely forgot. I want to actually play a movement of one of the spirituals from the Tibbet, Child of Our Time. And this is one of the ones that we'd be learning. And the best part about this is that there are soloists involved too. And so we'd be inviting the soloists to come give workshops as well as sing for our virtual stitching together. So I'm going to pass it along to Christian, who is going to play this video.
yeah, but in mind, yeah, there we go.
Still
Ah, that's such a gorgeous, gorgeous work. Steal Away, of course. I forgot to mention a little bit about Child of Our Time. This was based off of the Kristallnacht, which is the Nazis' government's reaction, like a violent program against the Jewish people, Jewish population, after a German diplomat was killed by a young Jewish refugee. And it generally speaks to those oppressed. And of course, that's something that is especially relevant and topical right now. And so there's obviously a very much reason, not only for the Brahms, who, as you know, the Brahms Requiem was written to comfort those living, which I think is also important today, but also through the Child of Our Time, which is meant, obviously, to highlight and talk about those oppressed. Again, two things that are very important, I think, nowadays. So before we go off to, I think, the next stage, I do want to say that, as I said before last week, music's function for us, I think, is, at least for me, is really to connect us all. Its goal is, when we release endorphins and we have this thrill of performing together, we have this thrill of being in a large group performing together. There's something very special about that and something very meaningful as evolutionary for us. And so not only is music for me a very personal experience in order to help calm the senses and again, remove me from the fight or flight amygdala center of my brain, lizard evolutionary part of my brain, and into the higher functions and to be a little bit more present in the world, but also as a way of building community. And so I think music is very important, has a very important function in our community. And as always, we are trying to find ways to maintain that connection and community, even though we might not be able to congregate. And so, again, these sessions, I think, are very important. And a big first step is being able to see your faces. It's so great. And your smiles, and of course, and I think we're trying to figure out, I didn't know Zoom had the capacity to go up to 500, even though we're not experiencing it right now. I still think that that is ideal in terms of trying to figure out how to create an ensemble experience. Okay, I'm going to pass it off to Christian, and we'll see what we can do.
All right, as I unmute myself. Hello, everybody. Well, we're having to adjust things a little bit on the fly. We anticipated after Ming gave us a little bit of highlights on the summer's program, like that beautiful Tippett music that we'll be able to work on later this summer, that I'd have a few announcements, and then we'd break up into rooms to all talk to each other with maybe groups of 20, a nice manageable size, instead of 150 at once. There are 100 of us connected through Zoom right now. And there are about 40 over on our YouTube stream who couldn't get in because Zoom has, for some reason, suddenly shut off our ability to go up to 500, which we really didn't anticipate. And we spent a lot of time planning so that we could get everybody together on the Zoom call. So we're considering what to do about that. One thing we could do is have another member of the chorus who has a big Zoom account put up a meeting, and then we could get about 100 of us here and 40 from the YouTube group over onto that other account. But having a conversation with 100 people at a time is difficult. So what we might prefer to do is I'll cover some of the announcements and some of the news that we were going to share. And Marjorie has some words to say, and Paul has a sing-along for us. And I think we might consider postponing the live discussions, because it's really, I don't think we get a lot out of it if 99 of us are listening and one is speaking. That doesn't lead to much time for folk. So until we can get in touch with Zoom customer service and figure out why they have changed our account credentials, I think we're a little stuck on the live discussion part tonight. So, so why don't we just, for the moment, I'm going to go back up to some of the news that we were going to share on this call, and maybe Marjorie will be prepared to say some words after me as I work maybe on what else we could do about the group discussions. So and I'm getting text messages I'm watching out for too. Okay, so you've heard, if you read your course notes, hopefully all of you read your course notes before you came to this meeting. If you didn't, you're going to get a little bit of a recap, which is you found out last week that our fall semester will start. I actually had an error in course notes. It's not September 8. It's the first Monday after Labor Day. So September 14 will start a semester. And exactly what we work on and exactly how we configure it in this virtual world that we're living in will depend a little bit on how the summer projects go that Ming has arranged. So you'll have to be, on the one hand, hopefully happily anticipating a start again in the fall, but on the other hand, a little bit patient to learn exactly what we'll be singing and how we'll do it. You can be sure it will happen on Monday evenings, but the details will be worked and planned during the summer, and the information about actually registering for the fall, the registration is likely to be in late August or early September. So there's nothing that you have to do now in order to be prepared for singing in the fall. And for these projects in the summer, we'll be sending more information as the first of the summer project dates comes closer. We'll be sharing information about that on the BCCO email list, just like we have been about these Monday sessions, so you'll be informed. I wanted also to repeat something else that was in chorus notes, which is our gratitude to Herrick Jackson and Elaine Jackson, members of our BCCO community. Herrick now in our bass section and Elaine formerly a soprano in BCCO, who made they've been Berkeley residents for a number of years and elected to make two very substantial donations to community organizations that are important to them. One was to Ashby Village and one was to BCCO. So it's just an extraordinary choice and commitment that they've made and support to us in a time where it's really difficult to run an organization like this where we can't get together in person and sing. It changes our experience totally. It upsets what used to be a regular pattern of financial support and engagement with audience. So to have this kind of a very substantial gift from them this spring was just a great help for the board to be able to say to our music staff, we can continue to pay you and keep you close, and we will keep our members engaged with programs like the summer program and the fall to come. So that's all much more conceivable for us with the kind of foundational support that Herrick and Elaine gave to us with this gift. So if you're on the screen and your video was live, and we could give them a little jazz hands or applause, but we're really, all of us, I think I'm speaking for everybody who's connected, that we're delighted to have received such a wonderful support from them. And hopefully we'll have a chance to tell them about that in person in a couple of months. And you also heard Ming mention that Julia has been she's in the midst of stitching our Ave Verum Corpus virtual choir together. It's a lot of work. It's something that we're learning by doing. She's done several of these before. This is the first one with quite as many singers as 73, and we'll be working on issues like this ourselves over the summer and as we approach the fall, and hopefully have 100 or 200 of us working on something in the fall. So we're learning as we go. This is a new circumstance, but we're really thrilled that Ming is excited to work on things with us in the summer, to provide something that we can participate in and make music and learn, and that we're able to engage him and Paul, and that we've had Julia's work this spring. It's been terrific it's truly been the best we could possibly do in this environment, thanks to their efforts. So we're really grateful for that. I've gotten lots of text messages. I'm looking, I've got a number of members who've said, I have a Zoom account and we could hold 100 people, but I think unless we've got a mechanism for easily dividing people up in smaller groups, it's going to be hard to have a live discussion tonight, or not as satisfying. If we could fix this and either line up those folk and divide people up into smaller groups and do this next week or at some time that works for us all, that might be more satisfying than having a clump of 80 and trying to manage the conversation there with so many. So If Marjorie's in agreement, she might, with her comments, give me some feedback on whether she thinks that's more sensible or whether we should try to quickly wrestle something together with big numbers of people. But I might pass the baton to Marjorie. I will see if I can, if she unmutes herself and if her camera is on, I'm going to ask her to unmute and see if she's willing to move to her section of tonight's presentation. Hi, Mark. Oh, I muted you again. There you go. Hi, Marjorie.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me?
I can very well. I hope you don't mind you're getting yanked here onto the stage a little earlier than we anticipated.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm as frustrated as I'm sure you are at this Zoom getting in our way after such careful planning to try to make this go oh so smoothly. It's, I guess, part of the horrors of learning a new technology. And really, you know, what I want to say tonight is a thank you to you singers who have come back week after week after week and made it clear how very, very, very important this chorus is to you, what joy you find in it, and what fuel that gives you, if you will, as we try to learn how to thrive in this environment, which is not exactly friendly to an ensemble group, certainly not one of this size. So it's been a real pleasure to work on your behalf. I want to thank staff who've shown creativity and resourcefulness week after week after week. As I say, as we begin to try to use the technology in our favor and to do things that hopefully delight and please you. We can't expect to hit 100 every week with every program for every singer, but hopefully for most all of you. And we will look for a time, and maybe it will end up being that maybe the best time is after the first Brahms cycle for this summer. We will look for a time to set aside to have this conversation with you, because we really would love your feedback. We were all set up for facilitators, note takers, rooms, no more than 20 to 25. We were set up for tonight. So we will come back to you, because you and we together as singers in BCCO are what this is all about. So it's just to thank you for all of that, to say that we all hope to see you again at the first rehearsal come the beginning of the summer program. And unless someone else has something else to say, we will go over and out to Paul, who will help us sing our way out once again. But no, we will come back so that we get to have this conversation. So sorry we were derailed tonight. And love to you all. Sometimes I wake up and just pinch myself at how lucky I am to know you and get to sing with you.
Before we get to Paul, I just want to say one last thing. And that is, to me, you know, all the energy of our community is obviously very apparent right now. And to me, there are actually two parts to that. One is to have the energy, but the other is to focus it. And so for me, you know, it's always important so that we have a way to use energy and, you know, get people to be doing things and what the next steps are. And because, you know, like I said, music to me is all about connection. I think that making sure that we're connecting with people throughout our lives, as well as BCCO, is really important. And so my final word for, you know, for the session before Paul takes on is that, you know, reaching out to each other, to those that you know in BCCO, your neighbors or whatnot, I think that's the show of how strong a community is. And, you know, that's something that can be achieved musically, but also just as a part of our everyday life. And to me, like I said, you know, like it's one thing to have a lot of energy, but it's another thing to focus it within action. And I think that there are ways to make sure that we build our community and that we connect to each other. And that you should know that with BCCO, we're very, very cognizant. The reason why, even though it's going to be postponed, but the reason why we want to involve all of you is because what we find is by involving as many people as possible, the better outcome we get. You know, it's the wisdom of the masses. The more people that you have engaged and part of the process, the more important and that we have, the more important our outcomes are. And so every single one of you is important, not only for this course, but just everything. You know, we are fortunate to be alive. And I think that it is an important thing to make sure that we as BCCO know that that's the core of what we are. You know, the core of the word chorus is cœur, is heart. And you as members of the chorus, as the voices of the chorus, are the heart of this organization. We don't exist without all the singers. I just be waving my hands with nobody singing, you know. So it's very important to me. It's very important to the board, but it's something that I think is very special about BCCO is the idea that we are a very flat organization and that we want to make sure that all of our voices are heard. Okay, so that being said, let's use our voices. I'm going to pass it along to Paul, and I'm trying to find Paul in the Zoom. Trying
There
to figure
he
out
is.
where he is. Maybe we can.
Hello. Maybe if I speak, I'll just pop up there. Hi, everybody.
Hey, and Paul,
Wait.
I can see that you had to scramble. You probably thought you weren't going to be on for another hour or so, or a half hour.
Oh, yeah, it's easy enough to just move my laptop over here.
I just, in case your presence of mind didn't follow you 100% into the room, you were also maybe going to make an announcement on your behalf in Revital's, which we'd love to hear about before you.
Yes, I'll go ahead and talk about that right now. In fact, maybe you read about it in the not quite the chorus notes that we got this morning. Thanks for putting that in there. My friend and your chorus manager, Revital Schmerling, and I will be giving a recital together. It's a cyber recital. We're doing it in conjunction with Riggersloft Winery in Richmond, which is owned by Barbara and Kevin Brown, who, you know, they sing with a lot of choirs around here. Some of you might know them. But we are going to give a recital in conjunction with a wine tasting, and the recital itself it's free of charge if you just go and sign up. There's a website here. It's in the not quite the chorus notes. So if you want to go to this, it is on Sunday, June 28th at 4 o'clock. It'll be in conjunction with a wine tasting, and Revital will be singing some wonderful music. There's a song cycle by Libby Larson called Try Me Good King. It's about the wives of Henry VIII. And also wonderful music by Alban Berg, Claude Debussy. And I'll be playing some Debussy solo piano as well. So I hope you can join us for this. That's on June 28th. We'll see how a cyber recital conjunction with wine tasting goes. So for our sing-along tonight, this was requested by Janice Marotta, and I apologize if I misspoke your last name there, Janice. But this is an Irish folk song. It's a traditional song called The Parting Glass. And I don't know how familiar it is to the group at large. I happen to know it because I had done some work on it with Piedmont Choirs years ago. So I thought it might be a good idea. I'm going to play it through once with the melody so you can kind of hear it if you've never heard it before. And I'd like to thank you all for joining me all these nights on these sing-alongs and putting up with, you know, singing that might not necessarily be in range or in tune. I'm glad that I have the freedom to sound like that in front of all y'all. So, with that said, here's The Parting Glass. Here we go, all together now. 1, 2, 3. All the money that I ever had, I spent it in good company. And all the harm that I've done, alas, it was to none but and all I've done for want of wit to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the naughty glass. Good night and joy be with you. Second verse. Oh, the comrades I ever had, they're sorry for my going away. And all the sweetness that I had, they will wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, so virgin rise and softly call, good night and joy be with you all. Good night and joy be with you all.
That's such a beautiful song. Oh my goodness. That's great. And I want to put in a plug for Paul and Revital's recital, because Libby Larsen is a brilliant contemporary female composer. And she has the best tempo markings of all time. Like, there was one time I was conducting a symphony of hers and the tempo marking was just buzz. I was like, I don't know what tempo marking that is. But, you know, she is so colorful. She has this great essay called When the Concert Hall Became a Radio Station. And it's a brilliant think of how music has changed and how we access it. And I think that her essay and thoughts would be very applicable now when we are thinking about new ways for us to access the arts. And so I wonder if it's possible, if we're going to be saying goodbye now, to do something that I've done in other groups, which is to simultaneously unmute everybody at the same time to say goodbye. And so I just wanted to say, of course, this is our time to have our voices overlap and to be present. But let's see if we can do this. Looking forward to the group discussions. But let's see if this is, I see slowly.
Looking forward to it.
Like people are being individually. I wonder. Oh,
looking forward to it.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye. 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 Bye.
Thank you, Ming.
Thank you all. Thanks, Ming.
See all your face.
Everybody
Thank
in
you,
a couple
Christian.
weeks. Join the summer session. Look forward.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Night all.
Night, good night.
Good night. Good night.
Bonsoir.
40 people.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
Launch Zoom.
Went on.
Fun to see all the faces.
Very fine. Very fine. Oh, nice. Well, we watched it.
Hi, Kathy.
Thanks, Julia.
I'm having trouble with my.
Hi. Hi, Lynn.
Oh, thank you, Lord.
Hi, Sheila.
Nice to see everybody.
Hey, Chris. Hey,
Hi.
Patty. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, Patty.
Bye.
Waving. Waving, yes. Oh.
Chris. Everybody.
Oh, look at that pissy room. Oh, pissy room. Oh. All right. Who is that?
Who's doing that?
Who's doing what?
What is that?
Okay, who's last to the party to leave?
Oh, dear.
I recognize you people.
Oh,
This time lapse of hair growth is just as
Right. Plug in 5. 4. Good night.
good night, everyone.
I get to see each other for 5 seconds.
Okay, who's last to the party? To leave?